Okay, so I didn't know that the free trial of Bandicam is only 10 minutes. I'm gonna just record this as a part two. Essentially, what this guy is gonna say, what a lot of them say usually, is just they look at a trend on a chart and they say, if this continues, it'll end this way. And that's true. If X continues, it would end that way, yes. But it's just absurd to say that. What this guy did was just look at a chart. Look, he's not an engineer. He's not an engineer. He's not an agriculturalist. He's not a farmer. He's not a sociologist. He doesn't know. How do I say this? This guy's talking out of his ass. The same way I'm speaking to you out of my ass, this guy's talking to, this huge audience out of his ass. I've read his book. It's not good at all. Like I said, he's not an engineer. He's not looking at technological progress. He's not looking at farmers. He's not thinking of. He wasn't thinking, okay, what factors lead to greater or reduced population growth? And then essentially what he did was look at a chart, saw the trends, assumed that the trends would continue, and if they did, a population explosion would occur. And he was of course wrong because his analysis was pretty low IQ.
Are now severely threatened. What the population bomb does share with today's pronatalists is an unapologetic alarmism. At its heart is the observation that
oh my god, an unapologetic alarmism. And then he, within the video, he's implying that this is a bad thing, that you shouldn't be worried about anything, bro. If it's not related to capitalism, if you can't look at it through a Marxist lens, you shouldn't worry about it, bro. And I'm speaking as a leftist. I also don't really like capitalism. I also am a communist. Oh, I wouldn't say I'm a communist, but I have socialist tendencies. I understand. But it's just this idea that, oh my god, dude, if it's on the right and they're alarmist about something, these guys just classify it as being bad.
Of course, the doubling time of the human population has been exponentially decreasing throughout history. Prior to 1650, he estimates the global population doubled around once every 1,000 years. Then, in the 200 years between 1650 and 1850, it doubled again. Then again in the 80 years following that. By the time the population bomb was published, that doubling time had dropped to just 35 years. The challenges which might come with such a rapid rise in population are fairly obvious. It might be relatively easy to double the global population in 35 years, but it's much harder to increase the size of the global food industry at the rate required to feed all those extra people. Can you build enough houses for them, enough transport, educate them all? Can the environment take the extra stress they'll place on the planet? Ehrlich's answer is an emphatic no. He went on to argue strongly for governments to introduce measures to discourage people from having as many children. The only hope that there is that we will be able, at least in the United States, through the political process, to get a government that's courageous enough to say, look, we're overpopulated, we have to have population control and start moving in that direction. This concern that the size of the global population might one day overwhelm the resources available to feed everyone wasn't entirely new. The population bomb is effectively a modernizing adaptation of an 1803 pamphlet by Thomas Malthus, which similarly predicted that overpopulation would one day lead to famine and war. Nevertheless, Ehrlich's book was a sensation. It sold more than 2 million copies, led to its author becoming a regular guest on the Tonight Show.
And these guys, they aren't necessarily wrong. The only thing, I say this often to people who tell me that the world is soon to end. I say, it's not that the world is soon to end, it's that your world is soon to end. What if Altus speaks of this? There do exist, periods, cycles, where human population is too great. The population growth has exceeded the carrying capacity of the environment. And what tends to happen in these situations are war, genocide, famine. These things do occur. It's just that it's occurring all over the world now because the world is globalized. And they're not entirely incorrect. They say that famine, war, etc., these things occur. They did occur when population growth became too great. That did occur. The only thing they were wrong about is when they say the world will end. The world wasn't globalized enough in their time for it to end. I still don't think it would end in the way that, like I said, I do sort of agree with him. It's not going to go as these pro-natalists say it's going to go. Is it going to get worse for them? Yes, definitely, because they have less leverage. But let's continue watching.
Show with Johnny Carson and firmly lodged this concern about population growth in popular imagination. Until very, very recently, if someone was going to strike up a conversation with you about the global population, they were almost certainly going to argue that there was simply too many of us. Ehrlich's wish for population control even came true in at least one case in the form of China's infamous one-child policy, which punished families who had more than one baby. There was just one problem.
This was so brutal, dude. I often say to other people when we speak of China that if it weren't for this single policy, China would have won this decade. By far. It would have been a hands-down victory for China, honestly. If it weren't for this singular policy is the reason China is losing. Well, they're not winning as hard. It's brutal, man. It's brutal. The decisions of one man leading to the loss of a whole generation.
With Ehrlich's thesis. Even by the time the population bomb was published, global birth rates had actually started to decline. And over the next 50 years, they would steadily reach a point where the world's population was not about to catastrophically explode, but in many countries was actually starting to decline. In short then, the basic phenomenon that the Collinses, Elon Musk, J.D. Vance and their fellow pronatalists are so concerned by is a very real one. Across much of the world, people are having fewer children than ever before. There are a few key metrics which help us understand how population size changes over time. The first is the total fertility rate. This is the total number of children the average woman in a given country or region will have over the course of her life. At present, for example, the total fertility rate in Egypt is 2.8, which means that, as things stand, the average Egyptian woman either has or is on her way to having 2.8 kids. But if we're interested in whether the population of Egypt or any other country is going to rise or fall over time, then we need to compare that figure to another metric called replacement level fertility. This refers to the number of babies each woman in a given country or region would need to have for the size of that population to remain stable once that woman and everyone else in her generation passes away. In most countries today, that figure is around 2.1. The complete two children here effectively serve to replace the two parents who produced them and
Okay, it should be mentioned that usually these figures, you get the idea that what's going on is that the average woman is having 2.1 kids. I'm certain you've seen this in other videos and, in a statistics class if you've taken one, or you've just, you've just come upon or thought of it for long enough that when they say 2.1 children per woman, what's more likely that is happening, and what I've seen is actually happening, is that in certain countries like the USA, what's going on is that certain families, certain women, they're having 3 or 4 kids, and then a different woman or a different family is having no kids. I say family because, a couple to me is a family. And so that couple or that woman is going to have 0 kids, and this other family is going to have 3 or 4 kids.
Those parents die, whilst the 0.1 of a child accounts for the fact that, sadly, not all children will survive into adulthood to produce more children of their own. Broadly speaking, if a population has a total fertility rate of more than 2.1, it will grow. Each cohort of parents will produce more children to add to the total population tally than they will reduce it by when they die. If that population's total fertility rate drops below 2.1, then it will decline. Each cohort of parents fails to have enough children to replace themselves when they pass away. Okay, where does this actually go? It was here. Of course, within a certain country, this rise or fall can be either exacerbated or alleviated by migration, as people either flock to or flee from a certain place. Nevertheless, if we look at this chart recording shifts in the global total fertility rate from 1950 to 2023, we see that from a peak of 5.3 in 1963, that figure has been trending steadily downwards. As things stand, we're having just 2.3 children.
Like I said, it should be mentioned yet again that this is alarming the wealthier you are, and if you're of the class of people that have lived in a first world country for several generations, and they often have landed wealth, so like they'll just be landlords of, like for example, the land where Six Flags is within California. I live in Oklahoma, but I know a woman who is family with the people who own that land, and Six Flags pays those people rent. These people are completely unproductive. They're just old heads. They don't work. They haven't worked for like 35 years. But just because they own that land, they receive payment for that land. And what I mean to say is that if you're a landed aristocrat, this is very alarming for you, because if you have fewer people, fewer people are going to want your land, fewer people are going to use you, or want to use your product, that being land, because you're useless and you don't produce anything. You're not a worker, you're not an innovator, you're not an engineer, you're not anything useful. All you do is that you have a paper that says that you own this, and so if you build something on it, you have to pay me for the privilege of using my land. How did I acquire it? Oh, my family 4 generations ago lived in the US, and he bought it for like $10. And so, yeah, I just want to mention that this is why these people hate population collapse. This is why these people hate a reduced population. That's why they, they use immigrants. They don't love immigrants. I gotta mention this. They use them. A lot of these people are still very racist. They're still very evil towards people that they can use, and they like immigration, quote unquote. They don't like immigrants. Even these people who are ostensibly pro-immigration are still usually very racist. If you've spoken to them, you see how evil they are. They're pretty psychopathic. These people, they've never had to endure any sort of hardship. If you speak to their children for long enough, you'll see how psychopathic they are. It's just, I hate these people.
Per woman, and that downward trend only needs to continue a very, very tiny amount more before the global population begins to shrink. At present, this is exactly what demographers expect is going to happen. The United Nations currently predicts that the global population will peak sometime in the mid-2080s, at which point declining fertility rates will launch us into a new era of increasingly rapid population decline. And while Paul Ehrlich might be popping open the champagne, the pronatalists are concerned that a situation of what they call population collapse might simply present us with a whole new set of challenges. Let me show you another video.
Why is it in Japan many people have no children? Why the population is going down? Why are women having so few children? Are you worried about there being so few children?
But what is up with this guy's, I want to mention this as well, this guy's body language, this guy, the way he interviews people, it's so bad, it seems so unkind, He, frankly speaking, he's making these people uncomfortable, and he might not know how to do it properly, but I feel that when you have these ideas, when you engage with these ideas in these ways, they tend to, there's a certain kind of psychological profile that likes these ideas, that likes engaging with the ideas. I do as well, but I like to think that I am the exception. However, that may sound like I'm sort of fooling myself. I just think that a lot of these people come into this with very negative intentions. They They want to proliferate themselves at the expense of everyone else. They want to use other people. They want to tell other people they can't have children. Oh, but I can. It's very. These people do tend to be a little bit more evil than your average person.